if everyone can hear me just fine. And this is our opportunity to welcome everyone to the SCB General Members Meeting. Basically, I really want to acknowledge for everyone, but thank you for attending. This is really helpful to us as a membership society. The global pandemic and global challenges around justice and climate and global change in general has made this very much an unprecedented year. And I really am appreciative, especially during the lockdown that we've been in here, for the society as a community. I've been really impressed with the work that the SCB Global and Section Equity, Inclusion, and Diversity Committees and members in general are doing on behalf of justice, and the supportive letters that they wrote for the society on Black Lives Matter. This is important work, and I hope we can be kind to one another, keep the comments, including the chat room, constructive, and recognize each other's hard work that we're doing this year and as always, but especially this year, under the pressure of what have been very difficult times. And with that, we'll open the general members meeting and continue with our agenda. There are many leaders that share leadership of the society. I am not going to read them all to you, but to say that it has been an absolute pleasure to work with the Board of Governors this past 2 years as I've been president. We work well together. We work toward consensus. There's been just wonderful communication, and I am grateful for everyone on this slide. And there were people who were on the board slightly before them and people who are rotating on now. And everyone who serves in this capacity it's just been a pleasure to serve with you all. And this is just an appreciation of your time. That goes also for our staff who have been incredibly communicative, which is super helpful and not easy when everyone's working from home. They've been meeting as staff, they've been meeting with boards, they've been meeting with members, they've been meeting with sections. There's been a lot of great, just incredible communication, incredible hard work on behalf of the SCB staff. And their names are here. They're on a call. Some of them will be speaking, but this is just a shout out from myself as a representative in this case of all the members who really appreciate the fact that we have such an excellent staff working on important topics that keep the society and our journals and our priority topics moving forward. So thank you. Thank you for sticking with it and for all the hard work and for working from home and everything you do. Appreciate it. Right, so we have a packed agenda. I'm not going to read it, but just to be aware that we're going to move through some of these very important topics with you, and feel free to constructively add your questions and things into the chat room. We'll do our best to field those questions when we get to the question times and to honor everyone's participation in this important meeting. And I believe, Lionel, this is a bit of a formality, but Lionel, can you introduce yourself and pose and please approve the minutes?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Lionel. I'm the current secretary of the board. So I'm going to approve the minute of our last member meeting in Kuala Lumpur last year. So we are now 62 participants. Yeah, the quorum is there. So I'm going to move to approve the minute of our last member meeting. Everybody in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
In your post,
Aye.
Aye.
in your in your post,
If you're opposing the minutes, maybe put that in the chat because I'm not sure I'm catching if they're affirmative or oppose. And maybe Danielle, can you help us to see if anybody writes oppose in the chat? We need to count those.
Like we're getting all approvals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did we get any secondment
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
motion?
oh yeah.
We'll take Kevin as a second. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So the minute has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel, for doing the minutes from the Kuala Lumpur meeting. We appreciate that. If anybody needs the link to those minutes or anything, I believe Danielle's provided that already, but she can pop that back in as needed. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to our highly competent treasurer. Thank you, Jen.
Let me get my screen going here. Hopefully this is going to work okay. Okay, are you seeing my presentation now, the first slide? Yes, okay, excellent. All right, hello, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Let's see, okay, there we go. All right, so my presentation today is going to mostly focus on the Society's 2019 finances. So this covers the period of January 1st through December 31st of 2019. And so I realize that this information may seem a bit old at first glance as we're headed into 2021. However, historically, these are the numbers that are presented at the SCB member meetings, and there's a good reason for this. These are the most current audited financials. Also, SCB's fiscal year ends on December 31st, so we do not yet have any more recent final numbers. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start with a little bit of context. I'll then present the 2019 audited financials. I'll briefly discuss the status of our board designated reserve account. And then I'm going to conclude with some brief comments about our 2020 finances. And then there will be an opportunity a little further in the agenda for any questions. So before I start, I want to say thank you to the SCB staff, and in particular, Warren Sander and Miriam Hernandez, who are handling the finances on a day-to-day basis. So, okay, so to start, this slide gives you a general idea of the major sources of revenue for SCB. The largest sources of revenue are typically conferences, our journals, memberships, fellowships, grants, and donors. And this is what sustains SCB and allows us to focus on our mission. So in 2019, for the third consecutive year, SCB engaged Cherry Beckert LLP, which ranks among the largest accounting firms in the United States, to conduct its annual independent audit. SCB received a clean audit with the audit report stating, quote, "In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Society," end quote. In 2019, SCB's total non-restricted revenue was $3,635,285. The largest sources of this revenue were funds for the Smith Fellows postdoctoral program, earnings from SCB meetings, profit sharing, and publications. Other sources of revenue included investment income, membership and outreach, and finally, contributions and grants. In 2019, SCB's total expenses were $4,029,885. And the largest expenses were the Smith Fellows Program, the SCB annual meeting, and supporting services, which includes costs associated with the executive office, governance, and development. Other expenses were for membership and outreach, publications, and other projects, which includes SCB's group activities. Overall, SCB's net income in 2019 was negative $394,600. And this is largely driven by two factors. First, revenue from SCB's 2019 annual meeting was less than expenditures. And second, revenue from philanthropy was less than our budgeted projections. Another contributing factor, though to a lesser extent, was that revenue generated from membership was less than budget. Overall, SCB's total assets decreased from 8.59 million to 6.85 million in 2019. This was due to three primary activities. The first was the negative change in our net assets of $394,600 that I just described. Also, there were withdrawals taken from the Society's board designated reserve account. And then there's a standard release of assets from the Cedar Tree Foundation for our Smith Fellows program. So finally, I'll note that the total percentage of expenses that were directed to supporting services, what you might think of as overhead costs, was just below 13% for the year. So this slide shows the historic values of the SCB board designated reserve funds. During 2019, the SCB board designated reserves, or BDR, had a total return of $322,268, or 17.7% of the prior year-end principal of stocks, bonds, and cash. This is a net of income, a change in market value, new investments, and management fees. So despite this total return, the BDR principal decreased from $1,823,821 to $1,481,089 in 2019. This was due to disbursements of $665,000 that were made to maintain SCB's operations. Overall, the average annual return for the BDR over a 20-year period has been 6.3% on average, and over the last 10 years, it's been 8.5%. Okay, so I want to kind of conclude on a positive note, though. I want to give you a brief update of how things look for 2020. So in 2019, the board could see that we were going to fall short of our budgeted revenue. And mid-year, the board made some really tough decisions to make some changes to put us in a much better position for 2020. So in December of 2019, the board approved an amendment to the previously approved 2020 budget and significantly reduced our budgeted expenses for 2020. So actual performance so far in 2020 tracks favorably against the 2020 budget. And the forecast to year end currently places financial performance in line with our budget allocations for the year. And then finally, I just want to mention that SCB was able to secure a loan through the Paycheck Protection Program in the amount of $174,000. This is a loan that is made through the U.S. Small Business Administration to help organizations keep their workforce employed during the COVID-19 pandemic. This loan has a 1% interest rate, but borrowers are able to apply for loan forgiveness, and that's our hope that our loan will be forgiven. So that's all that I have, and as I mentioned, there will be an opportunity for questions a little bit later in the agenda. So thank you. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Jen. That was
if I can
really
figure it
clear.
out.
And of course, there will be questions, so hang on to those. Of course, you can add them into chat now, or you can hold on to them until we get through a little more content.
Okay,
And I'm passing this on to Nate.
I'm trying to figure out how to pause. I'm trying to figure out how to stop
probably
sharing.
grab it from you.
Stop share. There you go.
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
And Nate's going to cover some bylaws issues.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you, Dina. Yep, I'm going to cover some bylaw issues. Give me 1 moment, please. Apologies. Are you guys able to see my screen?
I can.
You can. Okay, cool.
Yeah, like you're in presenter mode or some other mode. You might just go into your full, like.
Oh,
I see both your notes page, your next slide and your current slide.
I'm sharing the wrong screen. Okay. Sorry about this, guys.
No problem.
Is this okay?
Yeah, and you're not in presentation mode, but you're in like the
Yep.
organize
Okay.
your slides mode.
My bad. My bad.
That's okay.
You
If you can go just to presentation mode, it will be a little bit bigger for us. But if you can't, I'm sure we can all see well enough. I had that problem, so.
I'll just do it this way. Apologies.
Yeah, sometimes Zoom sharing doesn't always cooperate.
It's actually, this is definitely user error right now, but it's okay. We'll move forward. So today we're going to make a motion to vote to approve SCB's changes proposed to SCB's bylaws. And I'd like to give you a brief history of why we're making this proposal and what it entails. So the proposal that's on the table here is to essentially reduce the time required of the SCB president to serve the society on the board. Right now, a president serves a 6-year term, 2 years as president-elect, 2 years as president, 2 years as past president. What the SCB Governance Committee has looked at was how does a society recruit from a larger pool of candidates who are willing to do this job? 6 years, they kind of determined, was just too much for people to invest in the society. So by reducing the term to from 6 to 4 years, we are hopeful that more people who are qualified for the position will be interested in serving the position. So with that goal in mind, the Governance Committee proposed to the SCB Board of Governors to reduce the term of president from 6 years to 4 years, which based on that proposal requires a few other changes to our bylaws. The board made that decision in May of 2020. In November of this year, we opened it up for a member comment period where members could offer feedback if they had any concerns about the proposed changes. And then today we will make a motion to vote. So I mentioned earlier that reducing the term from 6 years to 4 years necessitates other changes in the bylaws. One is that the Board of Governors will no longer have a past president as a voting member on the board. That also will change the structure a little bit of our governance committee. So typically, currently, the past president of the society will chair that committee. With the past president no longer on the board, we have to adapt. And so now the chair of the governance committee will be an appointed position by the president, who will appoint a chair of the governance committee versus just having the past president serve in that role. And that's a new duty for the president. You know, the bylaws, ultimately here we're looking at a few different changes. One is to the composition of the Board of Governors. I just went over that. One is to the duties of the officers, and that's to the president, who will again be appointing a chair of the governance committee. The other is the terms of office. Obviously, we talked about that. It's going from 6 years to 4 years. The executive committee, which is basically the president, the past president, the treasurer, the secretary, that will no longer have a past president. And then there's a change to the standing committees as well, just because the chairmanship is changing. So what we'll do here is, I just want to, before we vote on this, it's important for people to see what these changes are. Everybody who's a member of SCB would have received this by email, but this is just, I'm sorry, it's a formality, but I'm going to show you each proposed change. So the composition of the Board of Governors, what you see here is the immediate past president is no longer listed here. Another, again, minor change here. This is more grammatical, but all officers of the Board of Governors are nominated by the Governance Committee. That's just a grammatical change. That's not a substantive one. Article, the duties of officers. So you see how this is a new duty. Each president should appoint or reappoint a chair to the Governance Committee. This is new. It hasn't been there before. This is what we're voting on. And the chair of the Governance Committee will serve during the president's term. The terms of office, as you see here, we scratched out the president serves a 2-year term. The past president, I'm sorry. Moving on, the president-elect serves a 2-year term and then assumes the presidency when the newly elected governors assume their offices. The executive committee membership, as you can see, we've scratched immediate past president. And where it addresses the chairs, the governance committee is previously says is chaired by the past president. Now it's the chair must have previously served on the BOG and is appointed by each president. The governance committee composition changes a little bit because of this too. The chair of the committee is appointed by the president and 2 other members appointed by the chair. So now the chair of the governance committee will appoint 2 other members. I believe that's the last change that we're looking at here.
So Nate, do you move to approve and then
Yep.
There's pressing questions or discussion and then we move second, questions close? Is that a vote? Is that our process?
Yeah, I will make a motion to
Why don't you go ahead and do that? I'm just keeping an eye on the clock.
Yep. Okay. So I move that SCB votes to approve the aforementioned changes to our bylaws. And these Article 5.
And I can second that.
Okay. So now we'll open it up for a vote. Per the bylaws, for this change to be effective, you know, half the people here at this meeting need to cast a vote for approval or abstention or no. So
how did you want to do that?
well, I guess we can normally in a meeting that everybody's attending, people say aye, they raise their hands. We don't actually count. It's just sort of you can just tell. So here, I guess if everybody could maybe use the chat and just say aye, A-Y-E, or nay.
And also per Robert's rules, Nate, if there are any pressing questions, like
Yep.
you really don't feel comfortable understanding what's been presented, please say so. You should say that.
Yes, if anybody has any concern, we can open it up for questions actually before the vote. Does anybody have any questions about these proposed changes?
Hopefully it was clear, but.
Here, Rurik, just want to know why it was decided that it was the best strategy, just out of information.
Maybe I'll fill in since Nate, is that okay, Nate, that you presented some background? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that Nate pointed out was it's very difficult when we're asking people to run for president and then we tell them it's a 6-year commitment to the board, that we have been told, you know, I would run, but 6 years is too much for me to to commit to. It's a long time period. So we wanted to shorten it. The other reason we went with the 2 years so they would serve as the president-elect and then serve as president and not serve the last 2 years, which originally made 6, as past president, is because we've had mixed performance by the past president which I think relates to being burnt out. So presidents sometimes get through 2 years of being on the board as president-elect and chairing the conference committee. And then they do 2 more years as president, which is, I can tell you now because I'm in it, a big service load. And then we ask them to continue to work in governance for 2 more years to help with elections and to serve on the board and the executive committee. By the time I have observed this multiple times, not by everybody, but multiple times, I have observed presidents who get to that 5th year and they just don't have any more blood to give. And then the performance goes down and then the society suffers. So when we had a conversation about reducing the term, which was the goal, we decided that the best way to reduce it is to take off the past president role. The other thing, if anybody has worked with anybody who's rotated off as leader, sometimes leaders are good at stepping back and saying there's a new leader in town and we need to all work together to support that person. But it is the 2 years that we've had the most trouble with, is those last years that people are tired and they also have formerly been president and watch, others change. And I feel in the spirit of our society that our presidents will always take calls and help. I know everyone who's ever served on the Board of Governors, when I call them and ask them, I was recently talking to Paul Beyer about navigating some journal business, and he welcomed my call and welcomed the input. So I think we can assume that past presidents will still provide input as requested, but this was the best way we came up with to shorten the term. I hope that's useful to you.
It's very useful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I hope that my comment about their involvement for Fola's question was clear. I know how nice it is to have someone who has that kind of experience, but we do have board members who stay on the board for 4 years at a time. So the incoming president is generally serving with people who have experience to share, and of course can call the past president. Of course, if I could get all members to serve with gusto for years and years, we would. But I think we're also trying to be realistic about what is implementable and what's palatable to people. Nate, you want to close us out?
Sure, yeah. So again, we'll call this to a vote, but we're going to need a second to the motion. So the motion is that we vote to approve the aforementioned changes to SCB bylaws.
Okay, Nate, I'm just going to grab one more question in the chat. We discussed several models. We discussed models where you would serve 1 year as president-elect, 2 as president, 1 as past president. But because of the way that our committees work, it's like complicated in the sense that the president-elect and the past president had committees they chaired. And one of the more important committees is the president-elect chairs the conference committee. And if they only serve 1 year, we would have a conference committee without a chair, things like that. So the problem with splitting these terms had to do with the committee work. I don't have time for a more elaborate answer than that, but I hope it's clear that the way that SCB is structured and governed and the way the committees are run, it was really hard to do a 1-2-1. Although I know that sections do that successfully, but it presented gaps in our committee chairs if we went with a 1-2-1 or other options. So all of those were readily discussed between governance and the board. I hope that helps. Back to you, Nate. Sorry, I just wanted to answer that.
Okay. No, I appreciate you answering that question. All right, so I guess if the motion is on record, which it is, can we have somebody second the motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm seconding the motion.
Thank you, Adina.
And I think you have lots of ayes you can still count in there. So.
Okay, cool. So let's just give it 20 seconds if people can present their vote in the comments section.
We will keep the chat record. All right, well, with that, while you guys are entering, it's looking good. So thank you. And thank you, Nate, for the detailed work that's required to do this. Nate, you didn't say your title. Do you want to say that real quick as far as what you do for SCB?
Sure, yes. I'm SCB's Director of Communications and Membership.
Thank you, Nate. All right, we're running behind, but we'll try to catch up. We're on to the SCB publications. Thank you, Ellen. Let us know if you need any support here for slides or if you're good.
Thank you, guys.
How's that?
We see you, but we don't see slides. Do you want,
Oh, no.
Danielle can show them, Ellen. Do you want to just speak and Danielle,
Sure.
Danielle, can you show slides?
Can you show my slide, Danielle?
Yep, I can. Just give me
Oh,
one.
that'd be great. Okay.
Yep.
I'm Ellen Main, the Senior Editor of Conservation Biology. I have worked on the journal since, get ready, 1993. I think we had a good year this year. Submissions are holding steady at about 875 a year. We published 134 articles in 2019 and 160 in 2020. We remain highly selective. Our acceptance rate is 19%, and 59% of submissions are rejected without review. 68% of papers are posted online in their accepted form within a median of 8 days. That's pretty quick and makes authors really happy where they don't have to wait for production to occur before their manuscript gets online. Our impact factor is 5.4, and we see no clear driver of the decrease from 6.2 in 2018, but competition from new journals may be a factor. Our cited half-life is greater than 10 years, and this means that half of the articles, half of conservation biology's articles cited in the literature are over 10 years old. Changes, we signed a new contract with Wiley recently, 5 years. Part of this agreement is that the journal will have a new format, and we are going to look more like Conservation Science and Practice and Conservation Letters. And we think this is good for unity, branding, but it's also going to modernize the way conservation biology looks. We are going to increase word limits on papers to satisfy author demands and increase submissions. In 2021, we're going to implement open research badges, and this is to encourage and reward authors for contributions to open science efforts. There's 3 categories: pre-registration, open data, and open materials. Each category has a unique little marker that will go on each manuscript, and each marker will be a link to the associated material. We will be having 20% member discounts for open access publication and paid charges, and that's new for the journal in 2021. In 2020, we had 2 special sections: wildlife-human conflict in agricultural areas and conservation psychology. And an upcoming special section is conservation culturomics. Also new is our February issue is going to be our review issue, and we're going to put all the reviews that were published in 2020 in that issue to increase visibility of already high impact papers and thus increase citations. At the bottom there, I want to remind our members of our Publication Partners Program, the goal of which is to increase the number of articles by authors from countries that are currently underrepresented in the journal. How this works is that when a paper is submitted that is not publishable but could be, authors are asked if they would like to partner with an experienced author and scientist to develop a revision. The editors identify the partner. Okay, I hope you all will follow us on Twitter at ConBiology, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. And I think we're jumping to Mark, right? So maybe Danielle, do you want to just keep going with the slides? And Mark, are you with us?
Yeah, I am. And yes, please just continue on to the next slide.
Okay.
It's Mark Schwartz, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Conservation Science and Practice. We're just in our 2nd year, as you might know. Our first papers were published in 2019. We published 110 articles in 2019, and we've published 146 articles in 2020, so that's an increase of about 32%. We've had an increase in 12% in submissions thus far in 2020. We've got 317 submissions so far. Our lead authors are from a really broad, diverse suite of countries, 31 countries. And one of the things that we did this year is we talked to editors, Eddie Game from Conservation Letters and Mark Bergman from Conservation Biology, and launched an SCB Emerging Issues webinar in the fall of 2020. This is a series of webinar speakers whose papers are in press at one of the 3 journals. I'm happy to announce that Willem Strauss from South Africa is going to help and coordinate a winter version of this, and so you should watch the SCB site for a list of speakers. It was a lot of fun. The talks are all up on the SCB Vimeo site, so you can look at them at any time. Changes that we made through this growth during this first year is we added a bunch of new handling editors, about a dozen of them. We rotated a few off, but most importantly, we added 2 senior associate editors, Carly Cook from Monash and Jenny Glickman from Spain, who are now helping to coordinate the handling of papers. And perhaps the biggest piece of good news for conservation science and practice is that as a new journal, it usually requires 2 years of publication, so to the end of 2020, before ISI will begin to consider listing on the ISI Web of Science. But we got listed early, about 6 months ago, on the emerging journals issue, and then we got bumped up, and so that we're now a regular journal on the ISI Web of Science listing. You can go back and find all of the papers that we've published since the beginning on an ISI Web of Science search. And that means that in 2021, when the new impact factors will come out, we will have one, and it will be a partial one because it will only count papers from 2019. What happens is they count the impact factor as a measure of all the citations from 2020 for papers in 2018 and 2019. And since we don't have any papers in 2018, we'll have a partial impact factor. But just looking on ISI Web of Science, it looks like that will be over 2, which was our target. So that's great. Just here in December, we published our first special section on African conservation, and in January, this is a changing set of objectives in terms of special features because the Oceania and the governance and institutions issues are both struggling to get that last paper across the line, and we don't want to do both in the same month, so we're actually flipping those around, and we'll do governance and institutions in January, Oceania special issue, a special section in February. Then we have ones coming up on human-wildlife interactions, intended consequences, parachute science, and others that are coming in 2021. So we're looking forward to having a great year. We're doing having a lot of growth, and those are our handles for Twitter and Facebook. And that's all I got. Adina, we can move on. Thanks.
Awesome job, Mark. Wow. What a big lift starting the new journal. Ellen, amazing. Congratulations for being with the Society and the journal for so long. And all of the teams. I mean, these are huge teams that work as handling editors. There are going to be questions about journals. What I would suggest is Danielle and Nate help us to collect the questions for the editors. And if Ellen and Mark can both stay on just until the question period, we'll get those fielded to you directly.
We can answer them in chat too.
Right. Danielle, is there a way to put you on presentation mode and then I'll keep going? Is there a way to push that down on the bottom right next to the slider there? Can you push that one? To the right. One step to the right from where you are. There we go. Perfect. Let's go with that. Thank you so much, Danielle. That's really helpful. All right, I'm going to speed through these, but it's an exciting time. So the fact I'm going fast does not mean it's any less important. Next slide. Great. All right. Well, SCB has had a bit of a roller coaster over the years with this transition between starting off as a North American society and then going into a global society, trying to find the right type of leader for our executive office. And given that that seemed to be continuing as I was entering president, the board decided to take a little bit of a step back and work with staff to solicit a consultant to help us to kind of really look at the structure of SCB. And one of the things that was really clear was we wanted to understand better about ourselves as an organization and how we could grow our global impact. And so this past year, we have been working together through this process where we actually developed a little smaller core team, and they got going with a consultant called NRhythm, and that's Jeff, Sue, and Trey Cates, and they were fantastic, and their whole team at NRhythm. And they helped us both to look at the health of the organization by running a survey. They facilitated a co-designing workshops using their regenerative framework. And then we moved, and this is in chronological order this year, so we've been busy. And then they also talked to leaders across the society in an interview format and a lot of staff and our staff. They made some recommendations. I'm going to go over this. And then we recently, just yesterday, got through board approval to continue to restructure the society. So next slide. That was sort of the overview. The Organizational Health Index was, we had good response rates among leaders. We had low response rates among members. And I think that reflected some issues with our organizational health. So our scores, and we weren't that surprised, showed that the SCB really needs to do some work to become a healthier organization in which we have stronger engagement with the members, shared leadership. And so it wasn't a surprise to us what was going on. There were some really positive remarks about some of the work that we do, but there was also this clear trend that we needed to improve. So next slide. So we use this regenerative framework, and I'm not going to go into detail with it. What I'm going to do is share some of our findings that we came up with together around what is the context in which SCB wants to work. What are the important things to our organizational health? What structures do we need to improve to make ourselves a more impactful society? And I'm going to share those findings. So just wanted to say we did work through a really interesting process led by NRhythm. Next slide. And I only share in this, I'm not expecting you to be able to read all these little Post-its, but for those of you who haven't used Mural, we were online together, as you can imagine, during this pandemic. And we spent a lot of time together just sharing our thoughts and organizing them through this little like Post-it tool called Mural. So what you're seeing is work by staff and board and all in a kind of online facilitated format in which we were sharing our ideas. So it was very much a lot of brainstorming. Next slide. And to share our shared purpose, and again, these aren't things that we are not doing this to write some fancy consultant report on SCB. We're really doing this to build a shared culture and understanding across board and staff and leadership that we can then propagate and share with members and grow together. So we didn't spend any time wordsmithing, which I'm quite happy about, but more getting at the core, what is the meaning? So we exist to advance science, policy, and practice in a way that encourages collaboration and community and knowledge exchange so that diverse and united voices create positive change for biodiversity conservation. What quality of life do we desire as a workplace environment and working together? We want to be a professional organization that values intellectual curiosity, is collaborative, transparent, and responsive while maintaining equity along with distributed power, as well as foster diversity and safety is what came from those sessions. The behaviors we seek, and I mentioned one of these at the beginning of this meeting, is to be kind and open, humble and respectful, empathetic, and value the importance of listening and open dialogue. Lastly, we aim to be entrepreneurial, aspirational, and seek consensus in taking action to meet our biodiversity conservation mission. So that's just some of the phrases that came out in this collective shared design process. Next slide. I might not go over these in as much detail than reading them to you, but they're basically the strategies that we thought were really important, and they're going to be revealed by a diagram I'm going to share. But there was this sense that we wanted to have stronger collaboration across our sections, chapters, and working groups, right? And we want to, of course, advance equitable access and participation in SCB services and everything that that means with diverse voices and perspectives and wisdom and things that you can see there in that second strategy. We want to be innovative with regard to including our members, and also innovative in the way that we run our conferences. Again, for a sense of time, I'm not going to read all of these thoroughly, but that's the direction the strategies are taking. Next slide. And this thing really came out clear. It was an interesting exercise. We looked at lots of pictures of the way organizations are structured. And we really were structured and are structured currently like this spoke design on the left here, where the Washington office is really at the center of the services of the society, and everybody else, whether you're a section or chapter or work group, is kind of connected to that centroid in the middle. And where we'd like to go through this process is through more of a collaborative network. So we saw at the beginning of the process as SCB as an organization, and we wanted to grow SCB more toward a network. So next slide, please. This graphic is not finalized in any way, but it's an attempt to show this idea of the network where we have sections at the heart of the network, and a network of sections. And then that there are chapters within these regional sections that we would like to really connect and feel served by the sections. We also really want the members to feel directly served by their sections, and we'll open to participating in our work groups and global programs, which are really topically based. And particularly, so those would be the places of practice where we like to practice. Let's say if you're a social scientist and you want to get together with other social scientists, come to a social science working group. And global programs as being topical and permanent, important parts of the society that galvanize the work and practice of the members, all served by the backbone of the global services unit. So rather than thinking about our Washington group as being executive staff that sort of direct the entire organization, we like to think about that group as serving across this network and enabling and being the backbone. And as well as, of course, the global board, who would oversee the governance of the larger network, so that we're partners in this. Next slide. Over the next 3 years, the board and staff have developed a working relationship with Jeff Sue and Trey Kutz at NRhythm and their team for a 3-year implementation period of this restructuring. It involves revenue sharing across the network. So it empowers the sections to become semi-autonomous organizations with the capacity to manage their work in their region and to support them over time. And it also relates to revenue and expenses related to membership, as well as the journals and conferences be shared. It also will work this period, this transition period, will have a transition implementation team, and they'll work to report to the board, and it involves section representation and EID and a lot of groups in that transition team. And we're hoping that they will then help us to align the governor board position. So there may be proposed future rejiggering to align with this concept of an empowered network. And also recommendation that we got, because of our goals that I've just shared with you, because of the direction we want to take this society as a global impactful network, we're not following right now an idea of taking on a traditional executive director. So we'll be working with the staff to organize the global services unit with the sections to grow their capacity and to empower this network. And I think I would like you all to think of this as a distributed network, as shared leadership, all designed to meet those purpose and health goals that I shared with you at the beginning. I think that's my last slide. Is that right, Danielle? Danielle, can you put your mic on now?
Yes, that was
Oh, great.
last slide. So at this time, we will take a moment to answer questions. Please put questions in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can during the designated discussion time.
Do you want to read them, Danielle or Nate? I think we need the questions from the chat read so we can figure out who to answer, especially the ones around journals.
This is Kevin. Can I ask?
Yeah.
Hi,
Danielle,
thanks very
I'm
much
turning this
for.
to you.
I just want to I'm just curious about moving not to have the traditional executive director position henceforth. How will, like every organization, there must be someone that really manages it and tries to make it move forward. So who takes that role in the executive office? Is that a team of people? Because or is this something that's going to be for some time to see if the position is not really required? I'm just a bit worried about that.
I think that is in the first quarter of the contract with the consultants. So that transition team, I think that is one of the things we want to address right away. Is it kind of a general office? Is it a manager of the team? So what they're going to first do is look at the current interview in very in depth the roles and responsibilities that the staff are doing now, and kind of a gap analysis. How do we assess and their desires and capacity to do the job they want to do into the future? So really understand the team that we have now and what their vision is, and how we help, match the work that needs to be done in the new network with who's in our group now, and then assess those gaps so that there is a reporting of, structure, and that group can function as a global services unit. And then determine what they need to function as that unit. But it probably won't be the same role where you bring in an executive director who has their own vision and wants to direct things. I think the idea is like, what does that global services unit need to fully function for the network? I hope that's helpful, Kevin, and we'll come before them. So it's one of the first tasks of the team that'll be implementing the plan. Danielle, do we have questions for our editors, or who do we have questions for?
Yep, so it looks like majority of the questions were surrounding publications, and they've been answered in the chat. I do see a new question here from Tracy Bain. How do you see the new organizational membership category fitting in within this new SCB organizational model? How will SCB continue to bring value to this org member category and involve org members in the mission of SCB and their own?
I'm not sure if I know what is meant by organizational member. Nate?
Yep, I can address that. Thanks. Tracy is an organizational, well, her organization is an organizational member.
Oh, of course. Yes, now I know what you're talking about. Sorry, Tracy. I didn't catch the title right away. Thank you for being an organizational member.
To answer Tracy's question, Tracy, I don't foresee that the network society changes in anything right now, practically speaking, with organizational memberships. I envision that organizational membership recruitment and adding value to the organizations that belong to SCB will remain a priority. It is still a relatively new program. We're still trying to figure out the best way to deliver value to organizational members, but there's not going to be a change with respect to how they belong to society and in their voice either.
I'm glad you mentioned this, Tracy, because I see you all as important clientele of SCB and really helping. And so it might be that we want to add interviews to our organizational members and ask you, you know, as we try to grow the influence of the sections, because we think that's a scale that the members will have a higher touch, then and we see organizational members as joining a global network, having global influence. So let's turn it around and get you all to participate if you're willing. It'll certainly be up to you, but I would like to add that to something we can do, because we really just went through this visioning period, but now we're on to like, how do we make this a reality and how do we make it work for folks?
Thanks so much. Yeah, that would be excellent to be able to be a part of those conversations. Looking across the diagram you had of the different member chapters and the different member, you know, committee and all the different things, I was thinking, well, as an organizational member, you're really cross-cutting over a lot of those things in a lot of regions depending on the organization. So it would be great.
Yeah, I agree. You're more the ribbon across the global scale than you are like, but there might be some organizational members who join because they really want to connect with the Asia section or something. Yeah. So we recognize that as being
great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
We'll now move to the next question, which will be the final question for this discussion period. There will be another opportunity for questions towards the end of the agenda. This question is from Sophia. How does this new structure prevent siloing or displacement of social science, which isn't topical?
Right. So the social science working groups and all working groups will continue to be open to all global members. So we don't see a change in the work group structure at this time. I see also a question about Marine. The Marine Board is in the process of talking to their members about becoming a global program, because the model is not a great fit for the Marine section. We want more. Right now, you can only join 2 sections. So we want everyone to be able to, who wants to participate, to be able to participate in Marine. So we started this new structure called a global program, and we think it wouldn't change the way Marine section is governed. It won't change the activities that the Marine section currently do, but they won't have to do a lot of the management of the membership that is more administrative that the regional sections will be taking on. So I hope that's helpful. I definitely will defer to Ed Hind-Ozen, who is the Marine section president, and he's working closely with the board and the Marine members to kind of talk about the transition to being an SCB global program. Hope that helps.
Hi, Adina. Can I elaborate on my question? Because I feel like perhaps I didn't properly convey it. I guess I'm asking more broadly. For example, with the Marine section, they're their own section, but the social sciences really aren't topical. We're not like people that study tropical forests or freshwater. And it seems like as the biggest working group, there's a lot of interest in us, but we're being siloed as a topical group. And that seems potentially counterproductive when social science is relevant to all the sections and would be potentially better recognized and integrated if it were distributed in a different way.
I'm happy to hear more from you guys about why you feel siloed. I thought the ribbon was spanning the whole network. It probably isn't a perfect graphic, but to me, social science was a working group that spanned all sections, receives global services to keep going, and is open to all members. So, but let's talk about that more. I'm all ears if you somehow don't see that that was projected correctly, or if you feel there's a better structure for you.
Okay, thank you.
We will move on to our next agenda item, and we will be hearing from Kenny Wallen from the Disciplinary Inclusion Task Force.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to introduce myself as I share my screen. I'm Kenny Wallen. I'm a professor at University of Idaho and am helping to steer the Disciplinary Inclusion Task Force. What I'm going to do today is simply introduce what the task force is and give you all an understanding of what we're doing and where we're at right now and where we're going to be over the next year. So the task force originated back in 2018 out of some conversations from NACCB 2018, from Sophia Winkler-Shore, kind of starting the discussion among members of various SCB sections and working groups. And it was brought to the board in 2019, and our task force was approved in early 2020. And so our mission, which you can read more about at our website there, just a link from the ConBio website, is to really just kind of uncover and reveal some of the ways that SCB can create an environment that's welcoming and encouraging to disciplines as a sort of a catch-all for worldviews, identities, backgrounds, and interests around this common interest of conserving biodiversity. So we have a pretty extensive membership on the task force, 16 individuals from all across the globe representing various disciplines and backgrounds and experiences. What we're going to be hoping to achieve is to provide SCB and the Board of Governors, and as Adina sort of in her presentation pointed out, some of the things that they're moving forward with on ways to sort of foster SCB membership growth from this perspective of disciplinary inclusion, to improve that representativeness, not just in disciplines, but in sort of worldviews, perspectives, those things that aren't necessarily easily revealed among sort of sociodemographics. And we're also, with one of our working groups within the task force, looking to understand sort of the legacies within conservation biology as a discipline, but also SCB to help remove some of the barriers to membership and to participation within SCB and all of its sections and working groups and chapters. So right now we have a timeline of, with a pandemic going on, I think we've pushed it realistically to 18 months. So we have support and funding from SCB, from the board, from the social science working group, from the conservation marketing working group initially. And we have a budget here of $20,000 matched from SCB and from myself. And we have support from SCB, the Board of Governors, the staff especially, and we're working to sort of build the relationships with the sections and working groups as we move into our second phase. So we have, just to give you a history of the working group, I've kind of broken it down into phases. So like I started talking about, the initial phase was in 2018 after the North American Congress. And proposal development took quite a long time to get going. Like I said, Sophia Winkler-Shore kind of led that charge to get us to the Board of Governors and to get that approval. After we got that approval, we began a recruitment process. So we began a multi-stage sort of global recruiting process in April, concluded that in June after a period of applications and interviews. And we actually just had our first meeting in July. So we're fairly new. And we just wrapped up kind of our first phase, which I'll talk about. That first phase was just kind of getting ourselves organized, developing our teams, developing what our focus was going to be for each of those teams. And then, as you'll see in the next slide, how we're actually going to conduct some of the research and exploration that we've sort of proposed. So our organization right now is we have three focal populations, if you will. So we're looking at how members, what their experiences are and how we can better support and include our members across the board with SCB activities and initiatives. We also want to look at what we're calling non-members or potential members to understand how either lapsed membership, past members, and people who have never been members before can become more aware of what SCB is, what they can contribute and what they can get from SCB, and to understand some of the barriers to membership and some of the things that would facilitate membership and engagement with the society. And lastly, we have what's termed an institutional history team, or sort of an organizational history team, to look at some of the legacies of the organization and of conservation biology as a field, kind of like who we are, or who we were, what we are now, and what we want to be. That team is very much interested in kind of what Adina presented, and working with some of the current and past board members and staff to understand how this task force can have some synergistic activity with the restructuring process. Phase one, like I said, we just completed this. We began sort of reiterating our objectives and formulating our research questions, identifying those target populations, and sorting ourselves into teams to look at those target populations and to understand how we can best sample them. As you can imagine, members, fairly easy. Non-members, very difficult to sort of identify who those people are and how actually to contact them. And we're in the development of our survey instruments, interview protocols, and identifying our key informants and primary and secondary sources for some archival research. In fact, I've just completed our draft IRB approval, or our draft IRB for the University of Idaho, where the project is being run out of, and we'll have that submitted hopefully next week. And then we can begin our formal research and data collection at the beginning of the year. So that second phase, that data collection, that will begin in 2021. And some of the archival research, which doesn't require IRB approval, has begun already. So like I said, with those three teams, the members team, the potential members team, and the history team, we have these multiple streams of data collection. And like I said, we're anticipating some of the survey and interviews to begin in February 2021. And since I have members on the call right now, if you do see emails from us, please respond to those. We would appreciate as much participation as possible. And we're going to further collaborate with the SCB staff and the sections, like I pointed out earlier, to understand membership and conference participation, to also get an understanding of the working group rosters in terms of who's on a working group listserv, for example, versus who's on a working group as a member of SCB. And then we'll be also doing some content analyses of the strategic and working plans of SCB Global and the sections, and to look at some of the history of the organization and how it's developed and how it's transitioning into the next century. And finally, some of the things we anticipate doing. Obviously, we need to analyze the data and report that. We have that targeted for the latter half of 2021. And some of the avenues for disseminating our work are going to be obviously a final report to the SCB Board of Governors and to the SCB community at large. And with ICCV pushed back to December, we're considering a organized session to sort of present our work there. And then something that we're considering partnering with some of the other committees to expand on our disciplinary inclusion, to work on some of the justice, equity, diversity, inclusion aspects that SCB's EID committee and SSWG are working on as part of perhaps a special section in one of our journals. That's it, short and sweet for everyone. I do have one request. Like I said, we're in the preliminary stages of data collection, and we are actually having trouble connecting with SCB Asia and SCB Africa members. So if any of you are on the line now, we would like you to, again, visit our website or email us so we can get in contact with you and kind of use you and your network to sort of expand our contacts and sort of the data that we can collect, and make sure we get a representative sample of all SCB members and including the sections and working groups. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. Our next agenda item is the SCB Group Congress Report. So I will turn it over to Nate Spillman again.
Thanks, Danielle. Let me share the screen. All right. I will get started here. This is a conference report. Tony Lynham, SCB's president-elect, is our chair of our conference committee. He's in Australia. It's very early in the morning for him, so he can't make it. But I'm happy to go through and provide a brief update on SCB conferences. We'll start with 2020. 2020, obviously, year of the pandemic. This had a major effect in good ways and bad ways on SCB conferences. On the positive, on the difficult side, as everybody knows, we had to scramble. Conference organizers had to make decisive decisions about moving over to the virtual platform kind of late in the game just because of the nature of when the pandemic started. Having said that, it was without a doubt a success in terms of giving SCB an opportunity to reach more people in a different way for our conferences. As you see in this slide here, our Marine section had more than 1,000 participants at their meeting. Our North America section, approximately 800 people participated in their meeting. Our LACA section, 150, actually I think it was closer to 300 participants for our LACA meeting. So, these were all positive developments and new for SCB. And one reason why we think we had good attendance on late notice was because of the virtual platform. Now these things are not cheap, even though they're virtual, but it's a lot cheaper than in-person meeting. We were able to adjust our prices accordingly. The Marine section in particular did a really great job of allowing people to attend their meeting at very low, very affordable rates, which basically expanded our audience by a great deal. So, all these sections, I congratulate their organizers for really pivoting quickly and making their meetings a success. I'm assuming everybody here has attended various virtual meetings this year. It's different, but at the same time, there's a lot of value in being able to make your presentations from home and also network with people in a different type of setting. There's a few lessons learned here, I think. I'll throw these articles into the chat as soon as I'm done with this presentation. But COVID-19 is Niner et al., right? Has allowed the opportunity to reinvent conference models and also affects our ability to be sustainable, equitable, and inclusive. And Viv Tulloch has also written about this, and in her paper in Nature actually is on improving sex and gender identity, equity, and inclusion at conferences, at conservation conferences. Looking ahead to 2021, 2022, the Society is going to hold its ICCB in Kigali, Rwanda. I'll get to that on the next slide. And our sections are planning for 2022 already. And our Europe section is going to be in Prague. That meeting was actually scheduled for this year in August, but they've moved it to next year. And our Asia section is also finalizing details around their next meeting date, which will be in India. Moving on to SCB's International Congress for Conservation Biology. This meeting was originally scheduled for July 2021. It's been moved from July to December of 2021. We made that announcement last month. There was just too much uncertainty with that meeting in July of this year, and moving it to December frees up a lot of opportunity for us to still hold an in-person event, potentially include some virtual components, and we will continue to monitor the COVID situation, and the plan is to hold this meeting in person. We will let everybody know no later than June on whether or not there's any changes. But if it looks like there will be changes to that, people would know in advance. But knock on wood, we'll be able to gather in Kigali in December. There's a few upcoming dates that are important, excited about. We will do our call for proposals for symposia, roundtable discussions, workshops, and training courses early next year, January 5th. You'll have almost 2 months to submit proposals. We will open a call for abstracts for contributor presentations approximately 2 weeks later on 19 January, and that will be open for approximately 2 months as well. And then we plan to open early bird registration for ICCB in June. For updates on this Congress, I encourage you to, of course, visit the website and also follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and we are also, accepting sponsorships, of course. If anybody here knows organizations that could benefit from having the exposure that ICCB provides, wants to support this Congress, please email iccbsponsorships@combat.org. Let me know either through the chat or just send me an email. But we're excited for the upcoming event, and this will be our first time back to the continent of Africa since 2007. And we're really excited about the opportunity to go to Kigali. And that's it. I'm not sure if it's question time, but I'll stop my screen share.
Thanks, Nate. We will now turn it over to Kevin Jabo for the chapters report.
Yes, can I share my screen and see that? Okay, everybody seeing me? Can you get me?
Yes, we see your screen.
Okay, good. So chapters are that's the most exciting part of SCB. So I'm just talking about chapters as conservation champions. So totally we have at least 43 chapters and counting. So which is something which we're trying to put across the world. So we send the updates continuously. So we make sure all the information is gathered there. If you don't see your chapter, it means you don't have that information in your chapter. I also like to get the updates. There are just so many different benefits when you become when you belong to the SCB chapter. So I'll refer you to always try to visit the SCB website to see what those different advantages are. But again, we've gone through so many of these advantages as during this meeting. You've talked about the publication in these journals. We've looked about attending conferences. There are just so many different things that we do. But again, we want to make sure we can apply together and stand as chapters. We also have the award grants which we give to students. Then we have microsolar conservation grants which we give to different chapters that we keep running. So across the world, we've had a lot of different chapters just sent us their different updates. So I'm going to just pick on a few. I talked to the chapter leaders, and we have the chapters committee which we meet every quarter. So we try to get the chapter leaders to involve in some of our quarter meetings so that we can get updates from different chapters. So a few of them sent us different updates. So I'm going to start with the Nigeria chapter of the Society of Conservation Biology. They've been very active this year despite the COVID. So they have 3 international SCB members that serve as resource persons during their chapter organized a webinar which they organized in July. So over 880 participants were there for the different sessions. They also organized in the 7th Biodiversity Conservation Conference. Again, that was virtual due to COVID. With very interesting outputs at the end. After the presentations, they had 40 scientific papers that were presented. They had a keynote speech that was given by one of the main invitees. 3 panel sessions and virtual socializing. So then as part of the activities, they had the membership recruitment, which were organized in promoting and created awareness for SCB around Nigeria. So they also made sure that the participants they indicated all the interest on how to join the SCB. It's something also which we keep discussing when we meet quarterly for members, chapters committee meetings. So we try to look at the different ways in which we create that harmony where members who join can be able to pay their chapter dues. So we move on to the Hawaiian chapter on the other part of the globe. They too have had lots of interesting things going on during this year. So they had money from the University of Hawaii Student Activities Program, and they were also funded by the Chapter Events Grant. At the time, we called it the Chapter Events Grant before it migrated to become the Michael Sule Award. Now, Hawaii Chapter got the award in spring, and they had a very interesting project which they called the Power of Conservation Storytelling. So we're hoping that they're sending up this, despite COVID, they've been sending us a bit of what is going on. Also, they've been having the policy committee in that process of submitting policy statements to the SCB. And then they also, in March, they had this environmental legislation in Hawaii. So that was part of their spring general meeting. So other activities which we recorded for Hawaii this year are the Science Communications Committee. They also had different education and outreach activities. And so as the year is ending, now we're in December, when we got this, they were planning to do the conservation volunteering opportunities in Oahu, and then they have the board elections for 2021. Then we move on to the Society for Conservation Biology meeting in Cameroon. That is the Cameroon chapter, which was founded in 2016. And we put together as part of it the first chapter for that region, and the work was there to advance science and practice for conservation biology within the country. So the president now for that society is Eric Nana, and is assisted by Roger. So they have a few activities which are going on. What is interesting is local membership in the SCB Cameroon has really grown to about 170 members with expertise across all the different professions in the conservation biology. And they have some interesting projects which they're doing now. The first is they're trying to use determinants of plant-animal pollination interactions around Mount Cameroon from individual adaptation complexes. And then they also got some funding for the conservation of the critically endangered and endemic African zebra wood that is in the Igbo forest. That funding came in from Franklin, so they're working together to carry out those simple projects. Back here in the US, we also had the Berkeley chapter. Also because of COVID, have been holding remote meetings. They've had a workshop, they have a Netflix teleparty, they have conservation seminars, and they're trying to translate everything in their website into the new and modern flexible form. And SCB Berkeley is also trying to carry out some conversations about their mission and how they can present their activities on campus. We also have from Indonesia. In Indonesia, they held an online webinar in 2000 on May 14th, and the topic for this webinar was should they be using rice fields and to be planted simultaneously with pest and wildlife for pest and wildlife conservation. They also had other webinars in July, and then they're collaborating with other chapters to look at the highlights on COVID. But what we had when we talked to the chapters in Indonesia, they had some major challenges. The first was they didn't see their name on the SCB list. We tried to sort that out. So I've been working with the executive office to make sure that they have it in their list, because one of the complaints they had at the time was that they're having so much pressure because, well, why are we not listed on the SCB executive office? So I think we tried to fix that already. Most of the people from Indonesia committee team, they have difficulty due to their work schedules. So again, it's not just for Indonesia. We're having the same issues when we talk to presidents. We have the same issues in Kenya, We've talked to some people in Zimbabwe and the forming of the chapter in Uganda. So we try to look at people's work schedules to see how we can manage that time to see if you can dedicate some time for your activities for your different chapters. And due to the difficult time zone which we all face, so it is difficult for them to always join different meetings. So again, and one thing that we always try to do when we do the quarterly meetings, we try to rotate it in such a way since chapters are located in different parts of the world. So some people do it at midnight, some people do it early in the morning, some people do it during the day. So it's something that because we are located in every part of the continent, of the globe, we can't resolve a particular time that works for everybody. For the Davis chapters, they have recent events. They're doing some very interesting things like bat viewing at the Yellow Bypass. And also they are also doing some routine birth phenology surveys, but then they put that on hold due to the COVID event, due to the pandemic. The upcoming events which we are looking to doing at the Davis chapter is looking at speakers and mentoring events for undergraduate students and non-academic conservation career panel. So that originally scheduled in April, it has been moved to 2021 to a date yet to be determined. But again, they'll let us know, and we're going to put that information out once everything is sorted out. In Madagascar, they were very happy about, they were very active during the North American Sky Conservation Biology Conference, and they had virtual participation, but most of their team members were very active and participated and presented during the conference. They also had the chapter events grant that was supported for the Madagascar chapter. The application for reforestation project in protected areas in Tampolo was also successful. So Madagascar chapter is trying to organize a series of such seminars and discussions with invited speakers. Again, that will be that will send the information out once everything is scheduled. But because of COVID-19, a lot of things have been moved around. One of our newest chapters is the Sonic Cobble Skills chapter of the SCB. This one just came on board last month, so we're excited to have them here. So very active chapter with young and bright students. We're trying to make sure they are now listed on the SCB board and the EO office, and they have a lot of different activities going on. So when we get all these new chapters coming in, we try to make sure we link them up to the executive office, we link them up to the other chapters, we show them the different activities that can be done as part of the SCB family, and then we just move ahead and call ourselves champions of conservation. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. I love hearing about the chapters. I love hearing about everything that this society does, but having been a former chapters chair myself, I just really want to thank Kevin for his work with chapters, and for everyone who's been involved with chapters in the past and continues to see them as champions, which is the way we do. I know we're running long, but we would love it if people want to stay on for just a few more minutes and field questions. And maybe Danielle, I'll turn that back over to you if you see particular questions that you should read out. And
sure. Just one question so far that it looks like I should direct to Kevin. Why don't we have an East African chapter? Don't you think diversifying this would encourage membership?
You have the Kenya chapter. This Uganda is forming a chapter. So you mean we have the Africa section, and there are different chapters within the different countries. So we don't have regional chapters within a continent. So unless it's something that you want to discuss with the Africa section board, and they might be happy to do that. So, but you will see that we have chapters already in East Africa.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm not seeing that we have any new questions. If I've missed any, please drop them in the chat box and we'd be happy to answer them.
You also should feel free to turn on your microphone if anybody has a pressing question or something they'd like to share before we jump off. Appreciate that so many people have joined us. Yes, I think I hear something. No? Danielle, go ahead.
I was just going to make an announcement if nobody has any
Yeah,
questions.
and I'm not sure if Danielle introduced herself, but she did say what she does for the society. So she's been really great. I want to thank her for facilitating a lot of this zooming around, and Nate for helping us line out the agenda as well. But Danielle, did you just want to mention your role in the society?
Sure, absolutely. I thank you all for joining us today. My name is Danielle Carter. I am SCB's membership manager, and I have been on board coming up on 2 years now.
Thank you, Danielle. Nate, shall I turn it to you to close out? We really appreciate it. Of course, say something if anybody has a particular question. There's still a minute or two left.
Rurik again. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It's encouraging to know that there are changes that may, that we hope take us into a better direction. We need the society more than ever. And for the next couple of decades, it will be even more and more necessary. So congratulations for the hard work, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. I couldn't agree more. I think we all need our connections to each other and to further our mission in biodiversity conservation. All right, Nate, I think I'll pass it to you to close us out. Thank you all. Nate?
Yeah, one last message, guys, before we sign off. Next, we talked about governance earlier. Next month, SCB will hold an election for its next president. And you'll all get an email about that.
And vice president membership too, right? 2 offices?
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Okay. President and vice president for membership. Kevin is outgoing in that position. He's been great at it for the last several years. So shout out to Kevin. Thank you very much. But anyway, please keep your eye out for an email. The more people to vote, the better. And you'll learn about the candidates and be able to cast your vote for SCB's next leader as president and next VP of membership. And that's it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nate.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.